What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. A little bit earlier than normal, but we are here to talk about the offseason for the Green Bay Packers. Of course, the number one thing that has to be addressed, and fairly quickly, depending on who you ask, would be the defensive coordinator position. And I say fairly quickly for a reason that I'll get to in just a little bit. But since we last met on Monday, there have been a few developments in that regard. The Packers have put in requests for two more individuals for the defensive coordinator opening, both of which happen to be from Baltimore, now that those coaches can actually be interviewed since Baltimore's season has been concluded. So I figured I would kick off today with a little background on each one of those candidates, how the timing works right now, and then, of course, getting to your questions about everything offseason as well. The one thing I'm going to say at the forefront here, so much of what the Packers have to do is at least in part determined by this defensive coordinator opening, right? Like, you think about that. They're drafting prospects. Well, what do they need? Are they going to be running 4-3 or 3-4? How much nickel, how much dime? That may influence some draft decisions, right? Or what kind of schematic design does the defensive coordinator have in mind? That may impact some things. Same things with who do we want to bring back versus not? Who do we let test the market? So there's a lot to be decided from the defensive coordinator opening, and that may determine a lot of what else comes next. So taking a look at those two candidates, one would be from Baltimore, their inside linebacker coach, Zachary Orr. The very old age of 31 years old. He was a UDFA originally, then he went on to play for Baltimore. In 3 short years playing for them, actually made the second team All-Pro before having to retire at age 24 due to a chronic neck injury. In 2016, he began coaching for the Ravens. 2021, he became an outside linebacker coach for the Jaguars before coming back to Baltimore to be their inside linebacker coach over the last 2 years. And one thing we can say about his coaching is the fact that both Roquan Smith, who always has been a pretty good player, but he's ascended to a new level in Baltimore, and then Patrick Queen has suddenly also become an incredibly capable inside linebacker under the tutelage of Zachary Orr. What would he run schematically? I don't think a lot of people know yet. He hasn't been coaching for all that long. You'd have to assume that he probably is going to run very similarly to what we've seen McDonald run for Baltimore, which would be a very multiple, at times very aggressive front. So then that's one candidate. The other candidate, oh, by the way, I should throw this in too. If you haven't seen videos out there of like Zachary Orr talking to his players, he's a very excitable human being. He would be very much an amped up type of coordinator for the Packers, something that we have not seen in a very, very long time, if ever, in Green Bay. Then the other candidate would be Denard Wilson. 41 years old. This guy's coached all over. From 2008 to 2011, he worked in Chicago, except as a pro scout in their front office. Then he went on to become the D-backs coach at the Rams, Jets, pass game coordinator for the Jets in 2019 and 2020. 2021, he jumped to Philly to be the D-backs coach, then became the pass game coordinator there in 2022, and they made the Super Bowl. Then this last year came back to Baltimore once Gannon left to go coach Arizona, and he ran D-backs in Baltimore. What would his projected scheme be? Again, kind of fairly unknown. And that's the reputation with a lot of these guys from Baltimore. With Wilson, it's different than Orr in that he's been around so much, no one knows what an actual game plan designed by him would look like. Of course, he has experienced great success in Philly last year, which would be under Gannon, which is like a modified Fangio system. And then Baltimore this year, which again, multiple. So schematically speaking, no one's quite sure what Wilson would do. The pros are he's wildly experienced, varied. He's been successful wherever he's been, but the cons, not a lot. This is probably the most experienced defensive coordinator candidate they have outside of former Charger head coach Brandon Staley. There you go. Like, those are the two candidates in a nutshell. Now, the consequences here and why I said earlier that the Packers may have to move quickly in order to get a defensive coordinator. Just earlier today, defensive coordinator from Baltimore, Mike Macdonald, has been named the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, he's 36 years old. He just got a head coach again. He's going to follow up Pete Carroll, even though he's half his age, out in Seattle. And the belief is that he's going to be bringing one of these individuals with him to be his new defensive coordinator in Seattle. Of course, Baltimore now also has their own opening at defensive coordinator where they could slide in one of these candidates as well. So see what I mean? Like these guys may be already taking other jobs before Green Bay, even though they've requested interviews. We don't know if the interviews have been completed yet. We don't know much of anything at this point. So it's easy to see how I don't believe Green Bay is just sitting on their hands. I don't think they're being passive about it, but it is really easy to see that like these things happen quick when you see one guy from an organization go get a head coaching job and all of a sudden takes his buddies with him. That's a lot of candidates who you may be crossing off your list very quickly. So a lot going on in that regard for the Green Bay Packers. And like I said, getting that defensive coordinator in there, incredibly important to do so fairly quickly in order to make a whole lot of other decisions, such as player retainment and everything else. So hello to you out there. If you've got anything on this beautiful Wednesday, just let me know. Got any questions about the upcoming off season? Let me know. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the upcoming free agents. There are quite a few for the Green Bay Packers, although none of them necessarily that impactful. If you can see them on the screen there, this is from Spot Track. And I will say that that top one right there, Bo Melton, if you're taking a look, it has been reported by others that Bo Melton was actually on a 2-year deal, so probably not a free agent at all. But then you got DeGuara and Davis from the tight end position, which certainly takes away really 2/5 of the position as it is right now. You got Yash and Caleb Jones at tackle, Jonathan Owens, Darnell Savage, Zane Anderson, Benny Sapp, and Christian Uphoff all at safety. And then Dylan Taylor running back. So there's a lot going on, a lot of individuals that may be free agents soon for the Packers unless they get to work in locking some of these individuals up. In terms of each position, I'll go through that. DeGuara and Davis. What I won't be shocked at all is if the Packers actually work to retain one of these individuals. DeGuara seems like the Packers like him a whole bunch. Seems like, even though he didn't really come across in terms of statistical output this year, it did feel an awful lot like the Packers continue to rely on him, even if for leadership in the tight end room. Tyler Davis, huge component of their special teams plans before he went down to injury. I have a hard time believing that Green Bay is going to look at both of those 26-year-olds and say, both of you just get out. But of course, they do have Musgrave, Kraft, Sims, who all seem fairly secure in their roles as well. At the tackle position, Yash Nyman, Caleb Jones. Both of those individuals, and Caleb Jones, yes, he's an ERFA, so you can basically plan on him being back. Yash, completely unrestricted. He may be on his way out. In fact, I would believe he's on his way out, given how this year went. The big question at the tackle position is David Bakhtiari. Are they going to work out his contract? Is he going to stay with Green Bay? Are they going to work out a trade with somebody else? Are they going to just outright release him and open up $20 million in cap space by doing so? The tackle position is more than likely going to be determined by that singular decision. Nonetheless, this is probably a pretty high need in the draft sphere for the Green Bay Packers. And you want to talk about draft needs. Safety, probably number one. And unfortunately, this isn't a great safety draft. And yet the Packers find themselves in a position where safety is something that they really have to stock the cupboard with. Jonathan Owens, Darnell Savage, Zane Anderson, Benny Sapp III, and then Christian Uphoff, who continues to be listed here, who is not actually part of the Packers roster. I'm not sure why Spot Track still has him listed there. But Owens, free agent now, Savage, free agent now. I will not be shocked if one of those two is retained by the Green Bay Packers. Zane Anderson, just a special teams ace. Benny Sapp III, someone, again, an ERFA, so you got to think he's going to be coming back. But of the other individuals under contract at that position for the Packers, the only one is Anthony Johnson Jr. That's it. Everyone else is due to be a free agent, Rudy Ford included as well. Then taking a look, and there is Jonathan Ford right there. As I just mentioned, yeah, they have him under free safety, otherwise known as Rudy. He's going to be a free agent. Then at the running back position, you got A.J. Dillon, Patrick Taylor. A.J. Dillon, perhaps one of the more difficult decisions that the Packers have yet to make. And I say that because he is revered. He's a very positive clubhouse presence. He's good at what they've asked him to do, which is doing a lot of the what I call sacrificial lamb carries. He's good in pass pro. But watching A.J. Dillon go, hasn't it felt a lot like he's fairly replaceable? And if that's the case, then why not just go replace, especially with something like a mid-round draft pick? If Aaron Jones is considered nearly a lock at this point to come back to the roster, then why why retain Dillon as well? They very well might. Again, it wouldn't shock me at all, but I'm arguing that the logic is kind of both-sided here. You could easily make an argument for both sides. I still think bringing him back on something like a Jamal Williams-esque contract is entirely possible. Something in the $3 to $4 million range, something the Packers could easily afford as well. But we'll have to see if they do so. And if they opt not to, running back becomes a drastically more important position at the draft. And then, of course, beyond that, you've got a few others. John Runyon Jr., of course, notable as well, the right guard, the part-time starting right guard at this point for the Packers. He did give a tearful, I don't want to say goodbye, but certainly a tearful plea at his locker during locker cleanout day, saying that he's loved his time in Green Bay. He would love to return to Green Bay as well. I could see him back on a Lucas Patrick type deal, but my assumption here is that some team is going to look at John Runyon Jr.'s body of work over the last 4 years and say, this is an individual who can be starting somewhere. Let's have him start somewhere and get starters money to a certain degree. I think he's going to be moving on. And then again, one of the more difficult ones, Keyshawn Nixon. Now, Spotrick has Keyshawn Nixon evaluated right now at only $1.7 million in terms of market evaluation. However, I think that is heinously low considering that this last year he was retained on a $4 million deal with incentives and bonuses that made it up even higher than that. I do think that Keyshawn Nixon left a lot to be desired as a nickel corner this year, but ultimately, I think he's still in line to get more than $1.7 million as well. So those would be the free agents. Certainly a lot more discussion to be had there. Let me see. I do want to check one thing right now, everybody. If you're out there, if you can comment, someone just hit hi. Let me know that you're there because I'm going to check some settings here and just make sure that everything's good right now. Yeah, if you're able to, someone out there comment hi. I just want to take a peek at something as we are going here. All right, give me just 1 second. Sorry about that, everybody. Why is it being weird? All right, and I've had some questions recently about, oh, no one's saying hi. Why do I have a feeling YouTube Studio did something to me? Did something dirty. All right, let me just check it out super quick. Sorry about this. Hang with me. Hang with me. I think that's what we got going on here. Yeah, everything should be good on my end. Hey, George. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody said hi. Okay. Just wanted to make sure everything was working correctly. All right. So there have it. That's a lot of what's going on. Any questions out there about the defensive coordinator or even draft? I'm beginning my draft prep. Of course, as I mentioned, there's going to be a time soon we're going to start doing mock drafts. I've also tinkered with the idea of here on the channel doing a few live mock drafts, allowing you the opportunity to say who Green Bay should pick or not pick, and going through some mock draft simulators and seeing how that all works out for your Green Bay Packers. George saying, Seattle bet, is the background real or a green screen? For me, that's real. That is an old piano that I converted into being a desk, and then all that stuff up there, that is a little part of my personal collection of Packer stuff. So yeah, it's all, everything you see is real here. But yeah, that's my piano desk. So let's see. If you want my take on the defensive coordinator job, super quick. Now, I know last time I talked on Monday as well, there was talk about, well, Christian Parker's been offered the job, right? That was leaked by a few Packer people out there, not necessarily full-time beat writers, but individuals who do cover the team for a variety of different ways. And I think it was leaked like Christian Parker was offered the job, and then it was run into some considerations about whether he should take it or not on his end of things. Obviously, with the Packers requesting interviews with two Baltimore individuals, the search is still ongoing. Now, what the Packers should do here, I'm personally in favor of one of the individuals from Baltimore. What I am slightly curious about is out of all of Baltimore's positional assistants, even their pass game coordinator, run game coordinator, etc. It's a question to me as to why those two individuals. Obviously, Wilson has a lot of experience, or it's an incredible up-and-comer in the coaching profession, certainly someone intense as well. But why not throw out a defensive coordinator interview to Anthony Weaver, their assistant head coach and D-line coach? Why not throw out an interview to Chris Hewitt as well? Those are kind of my considerations here, because let's say that Orr goes to Seattle and follows McDonald there, and then Wilson takes over the Baltimore defensive coordinator job. All of a sudden, you haven't even put in interviews for anyone else that you may want to poach from the Baltimore staff. It just seemed like an odd decision, in my opinion. George, so far, Orr seems like a good locker room boost having been there. Yeah, and I mean, Orr's story is really kind of incredible, right? Like, went from being a UDFA player, only got to play in the league 3 years, and then in that last year became a second team All-Pro. This is a guy who was truly, as a UDFA even, was figuring out the game at an incredibly high level before suffering a chronic and relatively debilitating neck injury that ended his career at the age of only 24. And then to just turn that around and move so quickly up the coaching ranks. Now, it should be noted that since earlier today, when Mike Macdonald was announced as the new head coach for the Seattle Seahawks, that Zachary Orr, this is being kind of reported by a few Seattle insiders, so there's got to be some legitimacy to it. It seems like Zachary Orr is the favorite to be brought along from Baltimore to be Seattle's defensive coordinator. Frankly, that makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at Orr as a candidate, one thing that he hasn't done thus far is really schematic game planning or even calling a game. If he goes to Seattle, no, he's still not going to call plays. That's still going to be Mike Macdonald. But he then at least is involved on a more higher level of defense so that he can ascend his coaching career. I'm not positive. I mean, as good as Orr appears to be, as much of a rock star as he appears to be, as much as fun as the, let's say, cheerleader type coach that he seems to be, there is a rather large deficit in his coaching resume right now in terms of schematic game planning. And that would be a concern if Green Bay were to bring him in. He can go to Seattle, kind of get some of that experience. You know, the Packers could move on to someone like Wilson, Weaver, Hewitt, guys who have done it before, if they're going to go in the Baltimore side of things. Other candidates that the Packers are still considering, and I should say this too, the Packers are about as tight-lipped of as an organization as exists. There just aren't many teams out there that are as old school in their media approach as the Green Bay Packers. And it is entirely possible that the Packers have conducted, requested, performed more defensive coordinator interviews than we even know about. Think about where all of the news of all of these coordinators have come from. A lot of the requests have come from NFL level insiders, have come from opposite teams, even reporting that the Packers have put in a request. We haven't gotten anything from the Packers themselves. So in theory, is it totally possible they could be conducting more that we don't know about? Yeah, Julius Peppers all over again. The Packers are just operating in secret and no one knows. So that is something to consider. Hey, Kenny, how you doing, Kenny? Kenny says, Vrabel. I mean, so I get the want. I got to believe there's just no way. There's just no way that Vrabel would come to Green Bay. And there's a few things here. One, I'm not sure how great the relationship was between LaFleur and Vrabel when they worked together, when LaFleur was in Tennessee. And I know, like, you just got to get over it. But still, like, if you're a head coach, you want your top lieutenants to be guys that you trust, get along with, etc. And I'm not sure Vrabel and LaFleur loved each other in that year. Respect? Sure. Not sure that there was much more beyond that. And then two, Mike Vrabel, for all of the success that he's had as a head coach, for how stable the NFL views him, if he doesn't get a head coaching job this cycle, my suspicion is he would just go take a year off, sit out for a year, maybe do some media work, and then enter the head coaching cycle next year. I just don't see Vrabel as the type to now be done in Tennessee. Okay, let me go just like take a step backward and be a coordinator and then try to become a head coach again later on. Like, he's in the class of people who are head coaches. He's probably going to stay as a head coach. So is it possible? Yeah. Like, he's available. Packers have a job opening. Sure. But a whole lot of other stuff seems quite unlikely in that regard. Any other ideas out there for defensive coordinators? If not, I'm going to jump. I know today was some very weird timing. I had a family obligation that I actually got to jump to pretty quick. So I know today wasn't our normal timing for this. But if you are regular here, be on the lookout. Tomorrow I'm publishing a poll on the channel, which is asking when people who follow the channel, especially the close followers, and we're here for the live Q&As every single week, would like these Q&As to occur on Wednesdays moving forward throughout the offseason. So just be on mind, take a lookout for that. And of course, I'll act accordingly. David Carlson, hello to you. I'd like D. Wilson. Makes all sense in the world. Of the Packers candidates that we know about, he's the second most experienced, same age as Staley at 41 years old. Had great success in Philadelphia as their pass game coordinator last year when they reached the Super Bowl. And I think a real notch on his resume is the fact of look at what happened to Philadelphia's secondary as he left and came to Baltimore. Not to mention Baltimore secondary was dramatically better this year than it was last year. I think Wilson has a lot going for him. I'm also inclined to believe that Wilson is probably, quite possibly, the leading candidate for Baltimore to just slide into their D coordinator job now that that's open. We'll have to see. But Wilson's got a lot going for him in this regard. The one thing that I'll say about Wilson is in some ways he kind of appears to be the anti-Orr. And I mean that in some ways of like Wilson is very experienced, Orr is not. If you go look up interviews from these two gentlemen, Orr is a remarkably intense human being. Wilson doesn't strike me as being that kind of like dynamic, more in your face, intense style leader. Maybe there's more clips out there that I haven't seen, but at least from the interviews that I've seen, he seems to be a little bit more passive in his explanations of things, certainly still taking care of details, but I think you get what I'm going for here. So just very, very interesting that those are the two candidates that Green Bay has elected to take a look at from Baltimore. All right, if nobody else says anything else, I'm going to jump on out of here, head to my family obligation. I do hope that you all are having a great day out there. On Friday, I'll be back actually putting out a recorded video about another aspect of the offseason for the Packers to look ahead to. And then also be on the lookout for that poll later this week about when we want offseason Q&As to occur. Hey, Peter, how are you doing as well? Bonjour, my friend. There you go. Sneak it in right before the buzzer. But it is time for me to go. And then, Peter, since you're here, I will say, too, mock drafts going to be starting soon. All right, everybody, go have a great day. Thanks for being here. And as always,